A rich girl was murdered after she insisted on breaking up with her boyfriend. At first, it seemed like a crime of passion. But right after that, her entire family began to die. One by one, the killer vanished. No clues, no traces. And yet, every night, someone reported hearing her crying in the banana grove behind the house. Then, her restless spirit began to lead the way. One by one, faces were revealed. Who was the one who struck the fatal blow? Who hid in the shadows, pulling the strings? And the last person, the one no one suspected, who was it? This isn't a ghost story meant to scare you. It's a true event, one that once plunged an entire village into mourning. If you're calm enough, stay with me until the end of this video. Only by piecing together every shard of the broken mirror will you finally see the true face of evil. Mrs. Tu Lee's house stood at the head of the village. Her family had been one of the wealthiest in the region for generations, thriving in business, owning vast rice fields, with a grand home and well-educated children. Her youngest daughter, Du, was 19, fair-skinned, gentle, intelligent, and kind-hearted. She often helped others and was beloved throughout the village. Many young men admired her, but she only had eyes for one, Hung, a motorbike mechanic from the district market. Hung came from a poor background. He'd lost his father young, and his mother sold goods on the streets to raise him. She could only afford to keep him in school until 9th grade. Hung was tall, handsome, charming, and a little rebellious. At first, Mrs. Tu didn't like him. She thought, he just wants our money. But seeing how much her daughter loved him, she eventually relented, telling herself, as long as she's happy, that's all that matters. They were together for over a year. But the more they loved, the more Du began to realize Hung wasn't the kind man she thought. He was jealous, controlling, and prone to threats when angry. One time, she went to a friend's wedding without telling him. When she came home, he was waiting at the gate. Stone-faced, he grabbed her hand and dragged her to the corner of the garden. His voice sharp. "You think you can just go wherever you want? You seeing someone else?" Du turned pale with fear. But then he smiled and said softly, "I just want you to know, if I lose you, I won't let it go." Du began to fear him. She tried to end the relationship, but he refused. He even went to Mrs. Tu, knelt down, and apologized, saying his behavior was just because he loved her too much. Mrs. Tu softened, but 2 months later, Du ended things for good. This time, she didn't look back. Hung showed up at their house crying, begging, then shouting, kicking down the gate. The family had to call the police. After that, he disappeared. They thought it was over. Until one rainy night during the 7th lunar month, tragedy struck. Their maid, Man, noticed Du wasn't in her room. The back door was wide open. Mrs. Tu called her name, but no one answered. The whole family searched, until they found her body behind the banana grove. Her dress was torn, her limbs scratched and bruised, her face purple, eyes wide open in terror. Before they could recover from the shock, Mr. Loy, Mrs. Tu's husband, was found stabbed to death in the kitchen. Then Du's pregnant older sister was found strangled in her bedroom. It was a scene too horrific to forget. The police came to investigate. No fingerprints, no weapon, no witnesses. Everything was disturbingly clean, but rumors swirled in the village. "I saw him. That boy Hung. He was wearing a raincoat, standing at the alley since yesterday afternoon." Neighbor Mrs. Nam, trembling, shared, "That night, I was up watching TV. I saw a shadow pass by their window. Then I heard a voice whispering. It sounded like Du. How could you?" It gave me chills. The police had no evidence. Hung had vanished without a trace. The Tu household was blanketed in white mourning cloths. The only survivor was a baby boy, not yet 2, sleeping in his crib, untouched. But the horror didn't stop. In the nights that followed, villagers reported seeing a flickering oil lamp in the banana grove. Some swore they saw a white figure circling the house, long hair covering her face. A soft sobbing echoed through the night. "Mom, it hurts. I'm cold." No one dared walk past the house after 8 p.m. Then one day, a strange envelope appeared at the village temple. Wrapped in plastic. No sender. Inside, just a single line, handwritten in shaky strokes. "He's the one who killed my daughter. I saw him that night. He was smiling." After the night of the massacre, Mrs. Tu's house was locked up tight. No neighbor dared come near. At night, the barking of dogs, the distant howls of cats under the rotting roof tiles, and the flicker of a white figure near the fence gave everyone chills. The local authorities assigned night guards to patrol the area, but after just a few nights, every single guard quit. They all said the same thing. They felt like someone was watching them, breathing behind them, but no one was there. The district police launched a full-scale investigation. They reviewed every relationship the Tu family had: friends, acquaintances, former enemies, even past housemaids were called in. But no matter how hard they tried, every clue led back to one name: Nguyen Van Hung. A man who had vanished, like he'd evaporated from the earth. Man, the housemaid who survived, was questioned multiple times. She recalled that on the night of the murder, she had seen a green raincoat hanging on the fence just before dawn. At the time, she thought someone had simply left it out to dry. But then she remembered, it had rained for 3 days straight. Who would hang clothes outside in that weather? She shivered, then said something that made everyone in the room uneasy. The next morning, the coat was gone, but the grass beneath it was crushed flat, like someone had been standing there for a long time. 1 week after the funeral, Master Du, a feng shui reader from the next village, was invited to examine the land. He was known for being cautious and skeptical, never one to jump to conclusions. But after standing in front of the banana grove behind the house, he fell silent for a long time, then finally said just one sentence: "There is a restless spirit here. Someone died unwillingly, and they're still waiting." The family decided to set up an altar for Du inside the house. They lit an oil lamp and kept it burning day and night. But that very first night, the lamp went out. By morning, the offering bowl of rice was cold, and across the white porcelain were scratch marks, like fingernails had scraped it. The only person who refused to give up was Trung, Du's former classmate. He had quietly loved her since high school, though he never said a word. When he heard what happened, Trung quit his job in the city and returned to the village. Determined to uncover the truth, he began asking questions, quietly, patiently, one person at a time. Then one day, by pure chance, Trung met Mr. Lee, the owner of an old motorbike repair shop in the district. He was the man who had once taught Hung the trade. Mr. Lee shared that the day after the murders, someone came to borrow a motorbike from him in a hurry. At the time, he hadn't thought much of it. But when Hung's name started appearing in the news, it hit him. He wore a hat and a mask. Mr. Lee said, "But I recognized his walk. And the memory card he returned to me. I played it. There was a video clip of him, sitting alone in a graveyard, crying, saying something I couldn't quite catch. But I think I heard him say her name. Du." Trung asked to borrow the memory card. He watched the video again and again. In the dim night, Hung sat huddled beside a forgotten grave. His shoulders trembled as he sobbed, then suddenly screamed, "Why did you leave me? You promised. Du, you said you'd never go. You lied. You betrayed me." His voice broke, wild and desperate. Trung paused the video. Behind Hung, a white figure stood still. No face, hair so long it touched the ground. Motionless. And then, it began to move, softly, toward him. The video went black. Since the night Trung discovered the video with the strange figure behind Hung, he hadn't been able to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard a whisper in his mind, soft but persistent, like a voice calling from a faraway place. "Help me, don't let me die unjustly." At first, Trung thought it was just trauma. But after having the same dream 3 nights in a row, fear began to settle in. In his dream, Dew stood in the middle of a sun-scorched rice field, wearing a torn white dress. Her face was blurry, but her voice was crystal clear. Just like in real life. I was strangled inside the house? My grandfather saw, but he couldn't cry out. The next morning, Trung went to see Mr. Tu Fan, Mrs. Tu's younger brother, and the only surviving adult besides the baby. Mr. Fan was old, his eyesight faded, his hearing weak. Ever since that night, he had become absent-minded, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost. The family said he had a mental breakdown and remembered nothing. But Trung didn't believe that. He sat with the old man the entire afternoon, talking about old stories, village memories, school days with Dew. Out of nowhere, Mr. Fan grabbed Trung's hand tightly. His eyes rolled wide, and his body trembled as he muttered. He wore a raincoat, came through the back door. I heard Dew scream, I saw blood, I tried to call out, but my mouth was frozen, like something sat on my chest. Trung froze. Mr. Fan went silent again, as if the words had come from a trance. Trung immediately recorded the statement and returned to his motel room, playing it over and over. That evening, Trung went back to Mr. Lee's house to ask for the video again. This time, he noticed something at the very end of the clip, right before it cut off. There was a picture frame lying tilted on the ground. It was a photo of Dew and her older sister. The next morning, Trung returned to the La house, even though it had been sealed off by authorities. He snuck around the back, into the banana grove. There, he found a patch of dried blood, and a thin black hair tie hidden beneath an old brick. He took a photo of it, heart-pounding. Just as he turned to leave, he ran into Mrs. Sao, the woman who sold drinks at the end of the lane. She called out, "Hey, where are you going? Last night, I saw you standing outside Mrs. Tu's gate. You were talking to someone, but no one answered you." Trung's skin crawled. He hadn't been there the night before. That evening, he reviewed the security camera footage at his motel. It clearly showed him sleeping soundly at 11 p.m. But at the same exact time, a neighbor's hidden camera across from the La house, installed after the murders, captured a figure standing silently at the gate for nearly 10 minutes. The person wore the exact same jacket as Trung, but the face was turned inward, unrecognizable. The next night, Trung dreamed of Dew crying. She said, "Hung didn't just kill me. He killed someone else who knew the truth. Someone saw, but they were too scared to speak." The next morning, Trung went looking for Tham, Dew's closest friend. After the murders, Tham had cut off contact and returned to her hometown. It took Trung an entire day to track her down in a neighboring village. At first, Tham refused to say anything. "I don't know anything," she said. But when Trung told her about the video and his dreams, Tham broke down in tears. She shook violently and finally confessed. "Back then, Dew told me she wanted to break up with Hung because he scared her. But no one believed her. One day, she gave me a small note, said it was written by Hung. It said, 'If you dare leave me, I'll take your whole family with you.' I kept it for a while. But after that night, I got so scared, I burned it." Trung asked if she remembered anything else. Tham said that in the days leading up to the murders, Dew told her she felt like she was being watched. Whether walking to school or shopping at the market, she always saw a man in a raincoat and a hat pulled low, standing at a distance, staring. The strangest part? It was blazing hot those days. No rain. Trung returned home, mind swirling with questions. Why did the dead return? Why had he sleepwalked to the La house? And how many secrets were still buried in the dark? That night, for the first time, Trung saw something in the mirror. Standing behind him, it wasn't human. After seeing the shadow in the mirror, Trung fell ill. He burned with fever for 3 straight days, drifting in and out of consciousness, mumbling Dew's name over and over. The doctor said it was just the flu. But Trung knew something inside him wasn't right. As if someone else's memories were awakening inside his own mind. On the fourth day, Trung woke up. He quietly checked his phone. There was a new message from an unknown number. Only one sentence. If you want the full truth, go to the old cemetery behind the village shrine at midnight. That night, Trung put on a raincoat, grabbed a flashlight, and made his way down the old dirt paths he used to know by heart. The cemetery behind the shrine had been abandoned for nearly 10 years. Ever since local officials relocated it to new grounds. Tall grass reached his knees. The air was strangely cold. As soon as he stepped into the overgrown gravesite, Trung smelled something foul, like rust and incense smoke, though no one had visited that place in years. Under an old kapok tree, someone was waiting. It was Mr. Mui, a former construction foreman who once worked on the two families' house. He said he had seen something that night, something he had never dared tell anyone. The night before it happened, Mr. Mui said, voice low, I passed by the house. I'd forgotten some tools. I saw someone crawling through the fence into the backyard. Looked like Hung. He was dragging something heavy. I was about to call out. But then I heard a voice behind me say, stay out of it. This isn't your business. I turned around. No one was there. Just the wind. Trung asked why he hadn't said anything earlier. Mr. Mui gritted his teeth. You think I didn't want to? That night, my wife fell down the stairs. Cracked her spine. My daughter got bit by a snake. Nearly died. Every time I try to talk about that night, something happens in my house. So you tell me, kid, you really want me to say more? Trung stayed silent. This wasn't just a murder case anymore. Something far darker was haunting the entire village. He left the cemetery just before dawn. On his way back, Trung stopped by the old pharmacy, a place where Dew had once worked after school. The owner, Ms. Hong, recognized him. After hearing Trung's story, she hesitated, then said, back then, Dew gave me a folder. Asked me to keep it for her. She said, if anything happens to me, please give this to the police. But the murder happened so fast. I panicked and forgot. Wait here, I'll get it. Inside the folder was a stack of handwritten letters. And a recording. A phone call between Dew and Hung. His voice, harsh, cold. If you walk out of my life, you can take your whole family with you, to the grave. Trung brought the evidence to the authorities. But the police said the recording was too old. We can't confirm the voice. They said. Trung was crushed. But something inside him pushed him to return to the scene, one last time. This time, he went at high noon, when the sun was strongest. He brought with him a sandalwood bracelet and a protective talisman from a family friend. As soon as he stepped into the banana grove, the wind picked up. From deep inside the brush, a handkerchief flew out, embroidered with the initials DL. It caught on a dead branch. Trung walked over and picked it up. Below it, in the dirt, someone had drawn in the sand 3 figures: a girl, a man wearing a hat, and a child. Beneath the image, 2 faint words were scrawled. One more. Trung backed away, heart pounding. Could it be that someone else besides Hung knew what happened? Or worse, was involved? Back at the motel, Trung sat in silence, staring at his laptop. The wind howled outside, rattling the window. Suddenly, the screen flickered, and the old video started playing on its own. But this time, in the final frame, behind Hung, not one, but 2 shadows, were closing in through the darkness. After seeing the 2 shadows in the final frame of the video, Trung barely slept for days. He could no longer tell what was real and what was a dream. The whispers, the flashes of images at midnight, each one chipped away at his sanity. But deep down, he knew he couldn't stop. Because he was the only one still moving forward. Trung decided to track down an old classmate who used to be close to Hung in high school. His name was Nia. Now working as an electrician in the nearby town. At first, Nia avoided him. But when Trung showed him the video with the two figures in the background, Nia's face turned pale. "I know," he whispered. "But I didn't dare say anything. The night Du died, I was renting a room with Hung. That night he didn't sleep. He kept mumbling to himself. Around 2 a.m., he put on a raincoat and told me, 'I'm going to get justice.' I thought he was drunk. But when he left, he wasn't alone." Trung leaned in. "He wasn't alone? Who was with him?" Nia glanced around nervously, then said quietly, "A guy named Fu, Hung's older cousin on his father's side. He had done time for assault and had just gotten out of prison. When they were kids, Fu lived with Hung for a while, then disappeared. A few months before the murder, he came back. He and Hung drank together often." Trung jotted everything down. The next day, he went straight to the police station and filed a report, detailing his suspicions about Fu. At first, the police said there wasn't enough evidence. But a week later, news broke. A man named Fu had been found dead, his body floating in a stream over 20 kilometers from the village. The body was heavily decomposed, but an ID was found in his pocket. Locals in the area said that a few nights earlier, they had seen a man wandering near the stream, shouting, "Please, forgive me, I didn't mean to. I was just the lookout." Then he vanished into the dark. Fu's death raised even more questions. Trung was convinced Hung had pulled Fu into the crime. And now, Du was pulling them back, one by one, to face the truth. That night, Trung dreamt of standing once again in Mrs. Tu's house. The door was unlocked. On the altar was a photo of Du, but her face had been blacked out. Then the back door creaked open. Du stood there, her face covered in blood, arms wrapped around her stomach. She whispered, "It wasn't just them, there's someone else, someone behind it all." Trung woke in a sweat. He remembered the words scrawled in the dirt that day. One more. So who was the last one? The next morning, Trung returned to Ms. Hong's pharmacy. This time, she handed him a small notebook that Du had once forgotten. Inside were strange entries, accounts of being followed, shadows at the window at night, and one line that chilled Trung to the bone. "Mom knows too, but she's too afraid to speak." Trung froze. Did Mom mean Mrs. Tu? Or Du's older sister? He decided to visit Mrs. Sao, Mrs. Tu's cousin, who had lived with the family while Mrs. Tu was recovering from illness. After much coaxing, Mrs. Sao finally shared, "A week before the murder, I heard Mrs. Tu arguing on the phone with someone. She said, 'I already told him. If he doesn't listen, that's on him. But don't drag my family into this. Don't do anything crazy.'" She also recalled that on the night of the murder, someone came to the house very early, around 10 p.m., but it wasn't Hung. The person was tall, wearing a dark shirt, riding a motorbike with an incredibly loud exhaust. Trung noted everything, and at that moment, he realized this wasn't a simple crime of passion. It was a carefully planned act. There were accomplices, and too many people had chosen silence. Then Trung's phone rang, an unknown number. On the line, a deep male voice. "Want to know who's behind all of this? Meet me at the old temple at the end of the village, on the night of the full moon. But come alone, and don't bring a recorder." On the night of the full moon, the village was bathed in silver light. A cold wind swept through the alleyways, carrying the scent of incense from the ghost offering altars set before each house. Trung zipped up his jacket, hid a small knife in his pocket, and quietly walked toward the old temple at the far end of the village, the place rumored to have once housed a monk who practiced asceticism since the war. The temple sat hidden among bamboo groves, weathered and covered in moss. A faint glow from the prayer hall flickered out into the courtyard, just enough to light Trung's footsteps. He stepped inside. No one. But then, footsteps echoed behind him. A tall, thin middle-aged man with pockmarked skin emerged from the shadows. "You're the one looking for the truth, aren't you?" His voice was hoarse, rough, like something was caught in his throat. "I'm Hao. I used to work for Mrs. Tu's family 10 years ago. Trung nodded slowly, his guard up. You sent that message? Mr. Hao didn't answer directly. He reached into his coat and handed Trung a piece of yellowed paper. On it was written, "Every tragedy began with a broken promise. The dead are not the only victims. And the living, those who lied, are not just the killers." Then he began to speak. Back then, Hao had worked as a laborer for Mrs. Tu. One day, he accidentally saw her in the storage shed, speaking with a man he instantly recognized. Hung's father. Years ago, Mrs. Tu had had an affair with the man before marrying into wealth. Out of fear of gossip, she buried the past. After marrying, she cut all ties. The child from that affair was Hung. An illegitimate son, unacknowledged. She thought she could hide it. But blood doesn't lie. That temper, that stance, those eyes. I saw it, but I didn't dare say a word. Everyone who knew met bad ends. Mr. Hao shivered. Trung's heart dropped. If Hung was Mrs. Tu's own flesh and blood, then this wasn't just a crime of obsession. It was a lifetime of resentment erupting at once. Hao continued. Hung had found old papers that revealed the truth. He confronted Mrs. Tu, but she denied everything. She screamed at him, told him she never wanted a son like him. After that, Hung was never the same. He started drinking, talking to himself. Then Fu, his cousin, appeared. The one who dragged him deeper into the dark. Fu didn't kill anyone, said Hao. He just kept watch. Hung did the killing, but someone else cleaned up the mess. Trung's breath caught. Who? Mr. Hao shook his head. A man you'd never suspect. Someone in the force. Someone Mrs. Tu helped once, when he was just a young soldier. A debt she never got to collect. He pulled out an old, faded badge, barely legible. Only one line remained. Sergeant Tran Van Q. He's retired now, but back then, he was in charge of the crime scene investigation. Every trace, he erased it. Why? Because he owed her. But Hung got to him first. Forced him to choose. Help me, or I'll expose your past. Trung sat stunned. He'd thought he was close to the truth. But now it felt like he was staring into a bottomless pit, the deeper he reached. The colder it got. Do you have proof? He asked. Hao nodded, pointing to a tree behind the temple. Buried beneath it was a rusted tin box. Inside, the original crime scene report. Unaltered photos. Blood splattered across the floor. Footprints, different sizes, overlapping. At least 3 people had been at the scene that night. Trung took the files home. That night, he didn't sleep. A soft sob echoed from the altar. He opened the door. Du's photo trembled on its frame. The candle blew out. A woman's voice whispered, "Thank you, but, one more, still hiding?" Trung turned. The photo of Mrs. Tu on the second altar had cracked. A thin line split through the corner of her eye. Outside, the full moon still glowed. But the air had turned ice cold. Trung sat silently in front of the original forensic file that Mr. Hao had given him. The paper had yellowed with time, but the details were still visible. 3 different shoe prints. One large men's print, most likely Hung's. A smaller one, probably Fu's. But the third print was broader and heavily worn. The type of shoe worn by an older man. Trung thought for a long time. If Mr. Q, the retired officer, was the one who covered the tracks, then who was actually present inside the house that night? Along with Hung and Fu? Was it possible there had been someone involved from the very beginning? Someone no one had paid attention to? In his fog of thoughts, Trung remembered something. A family portrait once hung in the La family's living room, taken back in 1997. He had caught a glimpse of it during a childhood visit. The photo showed the whole family standing in the yard. Mrs. Tu, Mr. Loy, their 2 daughters, and one unfamiliar man standing slightly to the side. Wearing a dark shirt, Trung rushed to the village's oldest photo shop, Mr. Siu's studio. By some miracle, Mr. Koo still had the original negatives. He brushed off the dust and said, "This is a rare one. I took this photo myself. But that man, he's not Mr. Too's husband. There were actually two men in the original photo. Mr. Loy, and another guy, his name was Dat, came from the central region." Trung asked, "Why has no one ever mentioned him?" Mr. Koo frowned. "Because he disappeared suddenly. People said he transferred jobs, but really, he vanished. Rumor had it Mrs. Too had feelings for him before she married Mr. Loy." Trung borrowed a scanned copy of the photo and examined it closely. In the corner of the picture, the man named Dad stood slightly turned, one hand behind his back, his eyes fixed, not on the family, but on Jiu, who was only 3 years old at the time. When Trung zoomed in, a chill ran down his spine. That man's eyes were locked on the child. Cold, unsettling, and unnatural. Trung brought the photo to the village committee and asked a trusted contact to run a background check. After several rounds of inquiries, the truth surfaced. Mr. Dat once had a criminal record in another province for attempting to lure a minor. He was released due to lack of evidence. The news hit Trung like a stone to the chest. A terrible suspicion began to take shape. Could it be Jiu wasn't Mr. Loy's daughter? He rushed to see Mrs. Sao, Mrs. Too's cousin, the only person still alive who had lived with the family during that time. When Trung mentioned the name Dat, Mrs. Sao turned pale. Her hands shook. She couldn't speak. After a long pause, she whispered just one sentence. "That secret, Mrs. Too took it to the grave. But Jiu, she never looked like anyone else in the family." That night, Trung didn't return to the motel. He wandered the village cemetery, flipping through the files like a madman. The moon was pale. Mist covered everything. The world felt muted. Then, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. No one there. Back at the motel, he opened the old video once more. This time, he focused on the reflection of the lamp in Mrs. Too's bedroom window. And there, he saw it. Another man, standing in the room, wearing a hat, his shadow stretched across the wall. This man was not listed in any of the investigation reports. Trung's eyes widened. In all his searching for the murderer, he had overlooked one possibility. Someone had been inside the house the whole time, and never stepped outside. The next morning, Trung returned to the old temple. But Mr. Hao was gone. Only a note was pinned to the altar door. "Don't look for me. I've told you all I know. The rest is at the old morgue." The old morgue sat beside the district hospital. Abandoned for years, Trung went there in the late afternoon. Inside, it was dusty and dark. The iron doors were rusted. But on the cold stone table, there was a sealed brown envelope. On the front, crime scene photos, 2003 not released. Trung opened it. One by one, he flipped through the photos. And then, he stopped. A lump caught in his throat. In Jiu's bedroom, there was a hand-drawn picture pinned to the wall. It showed a girl crying, and next to her, a man holding a knife. The face was Dad's. Trung sat frozen in the cold, lifeless room of the old morgue. In front of him lay a child's hand-drawn picture. A man holding a knife, standing beside a crying girl. No names, but the face was unmistakable. Mr. Dat. A chill ran down Trung's spine. This wasn't just a drawing. It was Jiu's silent cry for help before she died. He carefully gathered all the evidence and turned to leave. But as he reached the door, he found it locked from the outside. He banged on the door, shouting for help. No one answered. Inside, the lights flickered. A shadow appeared at the end of the hallway. Trung yelled, "Who's there?" No response. The figure stood still, unmoving. He fumbled for his flashlight. When the beam landed, the shadow was gone. But when he turned back, there was a folded piece of paper now resting on the table. In crude handwriting, it read, "Stop looking. He's not dead. He's just using a new name." The next morning, Trung went to the district hospital to inquire about Mr. Dat. Records showed that he had once worked there as a temporary staffer, but abruptly quit without explanation. Even stranger, that same year, 3 patient files went missing, all linked to a woman named Lati Tu. Mrs. Tu. Trung met with an old nurse named Ms. Duyen. She spoke quietly. I remember Mrs. Tu came for ultrasounds many times, but she never listed a father. One time, she cried in the room and said, "If he finds out I'm pregnant, he won't ever let me go." The deeper Trung searched, the clearer the horror became. Mr. Dat had once tried to take Du away, but Mrs. Tu had refused and driven him out of the village. After that, he disappeared, as if he had never existed. That night, Trung dreamt he was being pulled into a dark room. Du sat curled in the corner, hands on her head, shaking violently. Tears ran down her face. She sobbed, "I'm not his daughter. I don't want to be called that." Then, her voice cut off. Behind her, a shadowed man in a wide-brimmed hat slowly approached. Trung jolted awake. The next morning, he went to the provincial justice office, requesting access to name change records from 2004 to 2006. After many favors and phone calls, he found something. A man named Dat, formerly from the central region, had legally changed his name to Trin Van Kang. Current occupation: floating fish farm operator in a coastal village. Without hesitation, Trung got on the first bus. 2 days later, he arrived at a small wooden house by the lagoon. There, he saw a man in his 60s, tall, weathered by the sun. As Trung approached, the man slammed the door shut and shouted, "I don't know anything. Leave me alone." Trung shouted back, "You're Dad, aren't you? You're Du's real father. You're behind all of this, aren't you?" The door creaked open. The man stepped out, face flushed, hands trembling. Then, after a long pause, he spoke, voice breaking, "I didn't kill anyone, but I didn't stop it either. I just stood there. Like a coward," he explained through choked sobs. Years ago, he had wanted to take Du away, but Mrs. Tu refused. Later, when Hung discovered the truth about his lineage, he came to Dad and asked, "Do you hate her?" Dad nodded, and Hung said, "Then let me make it right. Let me do what you couldn't." Dad, now Mr. Kang, said nothing, did nothing. He thought, maybe this is how my debt gets paid. Trung trembled with anger. "So you knew? You saw it all, and you still let them die?" The man bowed his head. "I thought he was only trying to scare her. I never imagined I deserved punishment." Trung recorded everything, then quietly made his way back to the village. That night, he went to the village cemetery. He placed Du's drawing and a single stick of incense on her grave. The wind howled, the incense curled, but burned steady. Then, a whisper floated through his mind, soft as wind, "You did the right thing. But it's not over. The last one isn't a man." After that night in the cemetery, Du's whisper still echoed in Trung's mind. The last one isn't a man. He tossed and turned until dawn, his thoughts spiraling. If it wasn't Hung, Fu, Mr. Dat, or Mr. Q, then who? Which woman could have been behind all of this? The next morning, Trung pulled out the 1997 family photo once again. This time, focusing on Du's older sister, Lati Kim Dong, 7 years older than Du, married, and pregnant at the time she was murdered during the infamous night. But something had always bugged Trung. No one had ever mentioned any kind of relationship between Dong and Hung, despite the fact they had once lived under the same roof. He started reaching out to Dong's old classmates. One of them, Lone, agreed to meet him at a small cafe. When asked about Dong, Lone lowered her voice. "Dong was very private," she said, "but I remember one thing clearly. Back when Du and Hung were dating, Dong once told me, 'That girl's playing with fire. If it were me, I'd never let it slide.'" Trung's skin prickled. He asked, "Are you saying Dong and Hung had something before?" Lone gave a hesitant nod. I don't know if it was love, but I once saw them fighting outside our old high school. And it wasn't a brother-in-law versus sister-in-law kind of fight. It was like lovers. A terrifying theory began forming in Trung's mind. Dong and Hung had a secret affair. But then Hung left her for her younger sister. If that was true, everything changed. Back at his room, Trung replayed an old recording from the case file. Hung yelling, "You betrayed me. You promised you'd stay with me. Then you picked her. That fake little thing." He'd always assumed Hung was yelling at Du. But now, the words sounded more like they were meant for Dong. Trung went to speak with Mr. Tai, Dong's father-in-law. At first, the man refused. But when Trung showed him a photo of Dong and Hung together at a birthday party, recently recovered from one of Du's friends, Mr. Tai went pale. Where did you get this photo? I burned it years ago." He admitted that before marrying Dong, he had heard rumors that she'd been in love with a local mechanic. When he later discovered that man was Hung, Du's boyfriend, he nearly called off the wedding. But Mrs. Tu begged him to go through with it, for the family's honor. After marriage, Dong began showing signs of mild depression. And something else, Mr. Tai whispered. Once, I woke at 2 a.m., found Dong standing in the bathroom, staring into the mirror, laughing silently. I asked her what she was doing, she didn't respond. In the morning, she said she remembered nothing. Trung sought out Dong's close friend Ha, who now lived in a nearby district. When asked, Ha offered only a cryptic line. Some women love the wrong man, but instead of walking away, they choose to destroy everything. Back home, Trung reviewed the crime scene footage again, slowing down a specific frame near Dong's bedroom. He saw it. A pregnant woman stood facing the mirror. In her hand, a knife. The reflection was clearer than her silhouette. It wasn't Du. It was Dong. Trung froze. He cross-checked the scene diagram. Dong had been found lying face down, her neck strangled, but no signs of struggle. No scream. No defensive wounds. What if Dong wasn't murdered? What if she took her own life? But why? Was it guilt? Or the fear that her secret would be exposed? Trung returned to Nurse Duyen, the same woman who had handled Dong's ultrasounds. After some hesitation, she confessed. She was pregnant with twins. But she only listed her husband as the father. I didn't pry. But once, I heard her mutter in her sleep. If they're born, they'll have your eyes. Those eyes, no one could deny. That night, Trung sat in silence before Du's portrait. He replayed the recording. The last one isn't a man. He stared into the flickering candlelight. Could it be? Dong was the one who brought Hung back. Dong, driven by jealousy, turned on her own sister? The door to the truth was now just barely open. Trung didn't sleep that night. He sat in silence before a small mirror beside Du's altar. Every time he looked into the glass, her words echoed again. The last one isn't a man. Now, all clues pointed to one person. Dong, Du's older sister. But one question still haunted him. If Dong had helped, why was she also killed that night? Or had she taken her own life? And if so, who witnessed the whole truth? Trung returned to the La family's old house, now an abandoned, sealed crime scene. But he didn't go alone. He brought little Fuck, the only surviving grandchild, now nearly 3 years old. The boy had no memory of the tragedy. But every time he stood near Du's photo, he'd gently touch her face and whisper, "Auntie Du is sad. She cries a lot." Trung requested permission from local authorities to revisit the house, this time accompanied by police officers and forensic analysts. During their inspection of Dong's bedroom, they discovered something overlooked for months. A small voice recorder tucked inside a pillow. The device was old, its battery weak, but when they pressed play, the first voice that played left the entire room in silence. "If I don't help you, you'll kill her. I can't stand seeing blood. But if this ends, I want to disappear. I don't deserve to be a mother." It was Dong's voice. Then another cut in. You promised it was just to scare her. You said it was only to make her leave you. So why did you kill my parents? Why kill a pregnant woman? Then came Hung's voice, sharp and furious. If you won't choose me, you don't get to choose anyone. And her. She stole everything from me. Don't you get it? No one gets to live if they betray me. Dung sobs. Footsteps. A door opens. Then, a scream. Not Du's. Dung's. After analyzing the timestamps, forensic experts confirmed Dung wasn't killed. She took her own life. After Du's death, overwhelmed by guilt, fear, and self-loathing, Trung broke down in tears. 2 sisters. One who died for loving the wrong man. The other who died from jealousy, guilt, and heartbreak. Neither of them survived that night. Not in body. Not in spirit. With the new evidence, Mr. Dat's confession, the voice recordings, and footprint analysis, the case was officially closed. Nguyen Van Hung was sentenced to death in absentia. Interpol issued a red notice. Authorities believed he had fled across the border using a fake identity. On the day of the sentencing, Little Phuc was brought to the memorial. He placed a single white flower before Du's photo. No one told him to. No one coached him. He bowed, placed his small hand on the picture, and softly said, "Auntie, I'm big now. Please don't cry anymore." Trung left the village. He handed over all documents to the authorities and family, but kept one thing: Du's old bracelet, found long ago behind the banana grove. He no longer dreamed of her voice, but in his heart, he always felt her smiling. Somewhere far from darkness, far from pain. 10 months later, Trung published his first book, Ghost of a Love Lost: Truth in the Broken Mirror. The book sparked national attention, widely regarded as a chilling wake-up call about the destructive power of misplaced love and silent vengeance. But there was one thing Trung never wrote, something he never told a soul. On his last night in the village, as he stared into the bathroom mirror of his guest house, he saw Du standing behind him. No blood, no malice, just eyes full of sadness. And one final whisper: "Thank you for bringing me back into the light."